Rye is one of the most versatile tools that we can utilize as deer hunters and habitat managers. In this video, I want to talk about 5 reasons why I absolutely love planting rye for deer. So our cereal grains make for fantastic nurse crops for our perennial plantings like clover, chicory, alfalfa, and rye is no different. Here you can see I got a beautiful strip of clover right here. And this was relatively weed free. I had a little bit of ragweed, but for the most part got a fantastic take on it because I planted this into my existing rye. It's just beautiful, thick, lush clover. There's some alfalfa, there's some chicory. What I did is I came in the spring and I frost seeded my rye right into this strip of clover, and it did a fantastic job keeping the weeds suppressed and giving that clover, chicory, and alfalfa a chance. So rye has an allelopathic effect. I never know if I say that word right. That helps it to suppress the weed growth, but it doesn't impact these perennial plants like clover, alfalfa, chicory. So it's a great natural weed suppressor. If you're trying to get away from chemical usage, it's a good one to utilize. I did spray a little bit of clethodim on here, but I could have probably just mowed this, or I know I could have just mowed this and it would have been just fine. So great nurse crop for those perennial plantings. Alright, so you can see I got a brassica pot here that was planted a month ago, and you can see the brassicas are struggling. So this is why I love rye. This spot was spongy, it was wet. We were going to try to get a food plot going here, and we just had a ton of moisture here in August, and because it's already low, the brassicas have struggled. Now they're starting to come a little bit, but that's because we've been drying out. But the rye is doing its work here to fill in the bare spots. So check that out. You can see I overseeded rye into this plot, and it is acting as a phenomenal filler in here where I need it the most, because these spots where it's growing is where I didn't get the brassicas to go. Now it's growing in with the brassicas too. That's going to work great as well. See it growing right along with the brassicas. But it's doing a great job of filling in these bare spots for me, because without it, this plot would have really struggled. But in a week, it's gonna be at that nice young green stage. Our bow season opens up in less than 2 weeks, so this is going to be primed and ready for bow season with that nice young green growth. Now you don't want to plant the rye the same time you plant your brassicas. You want to overseed later. But it's definitely doing the work in here, which is great to see. Doing that work of filling in these bare spots. So another thing about rye is it will literally grow anywhere. So you can see I got a compacted UTV trail right here, and broadcasted a little rye out right in my tracks. You can see that it germinated. We really haven't had much rain since I seeded this, maybe a few tenths at most. That's all it takes. Just need it to germinate and it's doing its job. I mean, even over here got a little bit going, but see right in the track here, I mean, as compacted as it comes when thinking about soil, and that stuff still germinated. Rye also works well if you want to try some no-till planting. You can see here got last year's rye thatch underneath these brassicas. So what I do is I come into this spot and I terminate the rye mid to late June, and then just leave that standing dead rye thatch. And then around the beginning of August, when I plant my brassicas, I'll come in and broadcast my brassicas right into the standing rye, and then take my cultipacker over top and smash the rye down right over top. Here you can see the thick thatch layer, and it works really well to get these brasses going as long as you got rain. So it is a nice no-till cover crop to have in place. You know, if you don't have a lot of tools, a lot of implements, the spot has never ever been tilled, but we've always no-tilled it and always been able to have decent plots. So one thing with this plot that I'm in is that there's a lot of shade. Brassicas don't grow well in shade. You can see in the back there's not any growing, not much growing right here, but the rye is growing here as well. So this will be a bonus tip for you. That rye can handle shade fairly well. You can see even right now where the sunlight's hitting. So we use this in this plot, or we use rye in this plot as our filler to fill in the spots where the brassicas aren't going to grow because we have too much shade cast in here. Now we can fix that. Someday we'll eventually cut these trees around this edge and get a little more sunlight. But in the meantime, the rye is acting like a nice filler for us on this little no-till food plot. So one other reason why I love rye is because it's very winter hardy when compared to other cereal grains. So your oats, once the frost hits it, most oats will go brown. I know they got these forage oats and things they claim are a little bit more cold tolerant, but you do side by side with rye and I guarantee that rye stays green longer. Winter wheat will stay green for a while, but rye will beat that. I mean, rye is literally green up until the snow flies, and normally if you kick the snow, you'll see the green rye underneath that snow. And eventually it'll rot away. But the nice thing about rye is it pops back in the spring too. So because it will germinate down to 34 degrees, it is the first thing that greens up in the spring. So we're giving deer nutrient-dense forage, green nutrient-dense forage, when they need it the most. So I like rye because it helps me in the fall, but it's also helping the deer herd out in the spring when they need it the most. And the spring is the highest stress period in the upper Midwest for deer. You know, coming right out of winter, that's when their just nutrient resources have completely been depleted. They're trying to recharge, reload after winter, and that's when we want to be giving them the best forage we possibly can so that we don't lose deer. So rye is awesome from a cold hardy standpoint and from a feeding deer standpoint. And as a final bonus tip, rye is dirt cheap. So you can't beat rye from a cost standpoint. I mean, it's the cheapest thing you can plant in a food plot. You see, like a lot of these forage oats, places will sell them for 40, 50, 60, I've seen up to even $80 a bag for a 50-pound bag of these buck oats. Well, rye, you can talk to a local farmer, and around us right now, the going rate is about $8 a bushel. A bushel's 56 pounds, I believe. So it's dirt cheap. You can throw that out, and like it grows anywhere, low prep, very easy to plant, but you don't have to invest a lot of money into it as well. So that's a huge bonus. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Y'all take care. God bless.